All righty. Well, hey, so with that, dive into our main topic. And I'm really fortunate, when you talk about association, especially with people outside of our immediate team, it's something that I don't think, do enough of, especially in the last 2 years. We've kind of been getting to find some other. But one thing that happened about a month ago is we were out in Phoenix, and there was a corporate overview that Chris Cook and his team put on, and me and Andrew Jimenez and Ryan Miller were invited to go out and hang out there and speak a little bit, which we were very grateful to do. And while I was there, I heard a gentleman get in front of the room and do like literally the best in-home training I've ever seen done in front of the room in that amount of time. And I was lucky to reach out to him afterwards and say, hey, could we kind of steal you for a few minutes to maybe jump on our call and reiterate some of that training for everybody. And luckily we do have him. This gentleman, Mr. Mark Newbauer, is an agency owner with the company. He literally just came off doing he was the number one agent for the entire company last week, doing over 50,000 a team. His team routinely writes well over 100,000 a month, and I think with that 50K week, we're probably going to be inching a lot further past that. He's been someone that I've kind of seen from a distance for quite a kind of ran into each other at corporate overviews and conferences here and there, but never really had the chance to collaborate too much until now. So Mr. Mark Newbauer, I'm really grateful that you took some time out to jump onto this call today. And so, man, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just start by telling a little bit about kind of who you are, who you direct to, and just a little bit of your background. The word of 2020, you're unmuted.
Slightly more interesting this way. No, thank you so much. Again, my name is Mark Newbauer. I'm direct to Chris Cook in the Cook hierarchy. And Grant and I, as he mentioned, had the pleasure of co-hosting a PCB, a corporate overview here in Phoenix at the Westin Kierland. Really great time. And thank you so much for what you said. Admittedly, I was on stage with Val Zarn at the time, so this is only going to be half as good as that was. But my background, I've been here for 5 years come July, and I've, technically I've been part-time since day one, but really it's more like I work a couple full-time jobs by choice. Symmetry has given me the opportunity to at least have the decision in front of me to not have to do that, but I'm cursed with a passion for some other things, so I work diligently on all the businesses. But I mentioned that just because if there is anybody that's doing this part-time, starting out, I know it's a tough balance. It really is, and this position's all about the grind, particularly in the early years. So again, been doing this for 5 years. I made agency owner last in December of 2020. And we're strong and growing, and it's all about, as we know, following the system and not reinventing the wheel. I think it was either Cecily Newsom or Sarah Pappas said, best copycat wins at conference, and that's really what it's all about here. So that's a little bit about me, Grant. I could go on all day, but I'll stop there.
No, I appreciate it. And, I didn't even realize that this was kind of a part-time thing for you, or at least, sometimes part-time. And, to hit agency owner, to be doing 50,000 a week, given that, maybe it isn't 100% of your time is pretty impressive. And it just goes to show, like, I love excuse eliminators in this business, right? Because, a lot of times we kind of sell ourselves on why we can't do something, or we justify why it's okay to dial tomorrow, or wait till next week, or wait till next year, or I'll start building whenever I figure this thing out. But like when you get people on, that maybe have overcome similar struggles, it kind of puts things in perspective that maybe we should stop buying our own excuses sometimes. So I appreciate you sharing that. And one thing, before we kind of dive into this, because I did want to spend a majority of the time on the actual training piece, but you mentioned something to me this morning when we were chatting, just about, that maybe being a high powered top producer, elite producer, that really wasn't, who you were, right? And I think we have so many people on this team that are elite and top producers, and sometimes, it almost feels like they're, 10 miles in the sky and then it's not attainable. But one thing that you shared with me is the word consistency. And so I just wanted you to maybe start with like telling me, like, what is that consistency meant for you in your business, being someone that maybe isn't necessarily a top producer?
Yeah, thank you. It's incredible, and I saw that we had achieved 50,000 last week. I thought, I can remember a year ago when we were really almost reaching 50,000 a month, right? And that was exciting. And when I came here, year one, I maybe broke 50,000 for the year, right? On my own pen. So I have to let the cat out of the bag. I'm not a top producer. I'm not an elite producer, and I never have been. What I have been is a consistent producer, right? So when I say part-time, that doesn't mean sometimes, right? Whatever I decide to do here, I do every single day, every single week. Now I have the luxury here and there to go on vacation and take time off as I will. But I love growing businesses, and particularly one that already has a recipe for success built into it, like Symmetry. So truly, I've never seen, a place where you can go and simply follow some instructions being the easy part, the hard part being the emotional labor that it takes to be consistent. Because when most of us come here, I mean, you've heard the stories galore. If you've been here for even 5 minutes, you've probably heard one or two stories, and you'll start to notice a pattern the more events that you participate in. There's something about this company, let alone the industry, that attracts people when they're at a special time in life, right? It's almost like you just reached the bottom of the barrel and it's time to look for something new. And that's when insurance comes into the picture, it seems, for whatever reason. And then you got the guys that are out there and the gals that are already ballers. They know the game and they see a great system and they come here. But for most of us, as it was my case 5 years ago, it's kind of cliche to say broken. I mean, I've always been a very happy person, a very optimistic person, but in no way was I providing for my family the way that I could have been, and in my eyes even should have been. But admittedly, I was probably in denial a little bit in knowing that tomorrow it's coming, tomorrow, and wow, the number of times that it was, maybe Friday, sometimes Monday, or maybe Friday, probably Monday, in my other businesses, and it just kept pushing itself out, and that became really frustrating to a point where I saw an ad in ZipRecruiter, I found Symmetry, and I came into this. But to your point, I worked very, very hard. But more importantly, I worked consistently, because with consistency comes success. Only through failure will you find success, right? Edison didn't invent the light bulb just by accident. He didn't, and he also didn't study all this stuff, for 10 weeks or 10 years and then be like, finally, I figured it out. Now I'm going to go assemble this stuff, right? No, the guy, I think it was 10,000 different prototypes before he got the light bulb. And, there's a really great story about, I think it was a Harvard study, and now it's just kind of an anecdote, but there was, I like to share this with my team. There was a class of people, right? And the teacher divided them up. If you guys heard this, you'll just get to enjoy it the second time. And if you haven't, great. But half the class was tasked to build the perfect pot. Like, I need you guys to study this material, and I want you to build this vase, and I want it to be the perfect pot. So study until you're confident, and then I want you to build the pot. This team over here, they said, I want you to make the most pots that you can, okay? Just make as many as you can. I don't care what happens, just make as many as you can and go, right? And the point was, at the end of the exercise, they were going to take whoever made the very best pot, and that's who the winner was. Well, when it comes down to it, the group that won, and again, this isn't just a story, it was, I believe, a Harvard study, a social study that took place, that the part of the class that had to make the clay pots as many as they could were the ones that built the perfect pot. Because they got in there, they got messy, they made mistakes, they learned from their mistakes, and they made it happen. But they had to make a lot of pots in order to make that work. And that was my, struggle, which I now see was an opportunity, right? Struggles are really just opportunities, unless you give up. So that was my opportunity for growth early on, was realizing that when I'm in that first home with this 82-year-old woman, and God bless her, she has her older special needs son in the living room, and they're kind of yelling at each other, and I'm sweating to death because I have no clue what to do. You know, we weren't doing Zoom. We didn't have e-apps. It was a piece of paper I had never seen before, and I had no clue what to offer her. And sure, visible sweats, right? And thankfully, I was able to reach my mentor, and he walked me through the appointment there. I was able to help her, and that was my first policy. It wasn't without the mess. It wasn't without the nerves, the fear, you know, everything that most new people feel that they don't maybe like to say out loud, right? So I didn't mean to overblow the point there, but I don't think it could be said enough here. I really don't.
Yeah. No, and that's good, man. I mean, it just goes back to consistency, right? It's like we'd rather be consistently good than occasionally awesome. You know, it doesn't take you being a 50 grand each week rider. It just takes you being a 3, 4, 5,000 a week rider, right? That just goes out and makes sure it happens, because we kind of know that over the course of a month, 2 weeks are going to be pretty average. 1 week is going to be absolutely fantastic. Doesn't matter what you do. You know, the people you run into, they can't spell no. You're writing everybody you see. Life is good, all is well, and things are good. And then you have that 1 week where it does, or what happens, you cannot do a single thing right. It just all feels like it's falling apart and your business is hanging by a thread. And so the thing is, if we have consistent, we know that those 4 weeks are going to happen. We got our 2 average weeks, our 1 fantastic week, and our 1 rough week. And it's all going to even out to having an awesome month, right? Or at least a consistent month. But the problem is when we have that 1 week that beats us down, and then we feel like we're not going to get back on the horse that next week, that's where we run into trouble. Or when we have that week that's awesome, we write 10 grand, life is good, 6,000 just hit the checking account. I'm going to go take the weekend off, do a little vacation. Oh, maybe one of those deals falls off the books. Then you kind of come back in. It's a little bit slower to get back into the rhythm, and now it's like that rough week happens. So that's just why we want to be consistent. So good point there, man. So let's dive into this. So in terms of the consistent, you know, production, obviously, you know, we've talked a lot about the phones on previous calls, so I don't know if we need to dive too much into that, but I really do want to go into the in-home, and I'll really let you drive this thing. But like, you know, let's kind of run maybe through your in-home, what you've done, what you teach, what you see has success, and maybe highlight some of the really key points that people can take away. And just to give you a little bit of context, I would say the biggest challenge for a lot of people here, because it's what I struggled with, was probably the aspect of digging into the why, establishing a really strong role and purpose, and having the confidence in showing numbers and getting an application today. So those would maybe be the key points that I would want to highlight on. But with that, man, I'll let you take it away here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You know, it's, as far as the in-home goes, again, I like to say best copycat wins, right? Because we really, truly do have amazing resources here. We've got scripts, we've got videos, we've got SoundCloud, and the real system, as you know, REAL, rapport, emotion, assumption, and lock it down. Those are the keys to a successful in-home appointment. And, you know, I can mention this again at the end, but to me, the 3 real keys here, where if, you know, if Grant just fell off the dock last week and I'm not here and nobody's here, if you had access to Cecily and Ayers Newsom recording, role and purpose, establishing role and purpose in the home, and then you've got Ashley Tarr's in the home recording, and then pick your favorite, Carl Miller we mentioned, he's got a great critical period recording, right? So if you've armed yourself with, as far as I'm concerned, those 3 SoundClouds, you pretty much have everything that it takes to succeed in the home. And guess what? You got to make a lot of pots to get there, because confidence doesn't come easy for most, especially when you're new to something, right? And the best thing that you can do when you're in a home is to be real. And, you know, we start with rapport, and one of the best places to be real is by establishing that role and purpose. Role and purpose is a great way to build rapport. When instead of, you know, when we went in the homes, you could look at a statue or a picture, right? And oh my gosh, I know that place. My grandma used to take us there, or whatever the case may be. It was a little easier to find some commonalities. There's family pictures around, there's stuff going on in the house. Maybe they're doing some renos and so are you. Complain about contractors together, whatever the case may be. Now on Zoom, it's maybe that much tougher because it's just your screen and their screen, right? You don't want to be snooping around in their background to see what might be on the coffee table back there. So one of the best ways to establish rapport, Grant, in my opinion, is just through role and purpose. And role and purpose is simply, hey, my name is Mark Newbauer. I'm a field underwriter with Symmetry Financial Group. And I just kind of want to walk you through, who I am and what we're going to do here today, right? I think a lot of people skip this part. They go straight to the, asking questions and everything else. And if you don't have a roadmap as to where you're going or a sneak preview as to what might be happening, though we may be doing this quite a bit and we have all this training and we've seen this maybe a dozen times from different trainings and things, they have no clue what we're going to be doing there, right? They have no clue. This is a great way to set up all 4 steps in one fell swoop. Let them know what your name is. Let them know what your background is. I always like to let them know I love helping people. That's why I do what I do. We have access to 30, 40 A-rated carriers, which means I work for you, right? I don't work for any one insurance company. I don't work for the banks. I work for the families I serve. And that's why I'm so passionate about sitting with you guys and helping you find the very best fit, if this is even something you're going to need. One of the great parts about my job is I get to ask you some questions about your finances and your health, your overall situation, and determine if this is even a need. Because if we find that you've already got everything covered, I'm going to be the first to let you know, and then I'm off to help my next family, right? If for any reason we do find there's a need, we often find that people usually need less than they think they do. And I can explain that later, but that's another way I love helping people. So, with your permission, I'm going to ask some questions about your health, about your finances. First, I want to start with, how long have you guys been thinking about mortgage protection? So, Grant, I'm going to stop there for a minute. One of the best ways to establish an appointment, guys, after you've introduced yourself, after you've explained to them kind of who you are and what you're going to be doing. And by the way, a rewind, once you say, if we do find there's a fit, and usually people need less than they think they do, my job is to basically find something that is the best fit, and most importantly, something that's a comfortable fit for your budget, right? Dishwasher breaks down, you need a new set of tires. This is still something that you can comfortably manage because it's something that you're going to want to have in place, at least for the duration of the mortgage. Some people for their entire lives, just depends on your situation. So we will, once we identify a good fit, we'll be filling out an application together, and that allows us to go to the carriers and identify, whether or not this is something that we can get approved for. And again, great news. I'm tied to 30, 40 A-rated carriers. So God forbid we find we're not approved for something, we simply go on to the next carrier. Fair enough? Does that make sense? Right? You always want to use these buy-in questions, guys. After a certain point, does that make sense? Fair enough. Is that okay? Right? You've got their permission. And basic psychology says that if you can get someone to say yes or agree with you or nod, 3 to 4 times during the appointment, you've now got them in the yes mode, right? So get used to this motion as you're talking with people, and ask them if things make sense. Are we good so far? Fair enough. Would that be all right? Right? You're getting permission. So how long have you guys been thinking about mortgage protection? Fantastic question, because you're already, they filled out a form, so they are interested to some level, right? To some level. So you're not saying, hey, why'd you fill out this form? I thought I had to, right? How many people have heard that have been in the field for a while? Well, I thought I had to. Well, you didn't. Here I am. So it's kind of a dead end, right? But how long have you been thinking about mortgage protection is a different story, and it already kind of fertilizes the ground for them to give you a more informed answer about that. Because if they didn't have one before, they're going to think about it now. They're not going to feel as good about saying, oh, I just thought I had to fill it out. Here's another great.
And real quick,
please.
I don't want to disrupt your train because this is so important, but a couple of things I want to highlight just for everyone to kind of recap what you just said there is a lot of people, there was a couple of comments that said, hey, how do you overcome to think about it? And we can maybe later, but one way that I firmly believe that the way you avoid to think about it is by going through and becoming a master presenter. It's not about having something magical to say at the end when they say that. It's about really going through all the steps and being thorough and getting micro commitment, that buy-in you talked about throughout. And when you use that question, how long have you been thinking about mortgage protection? Well, you're kind of subconsciously making them feel like he's sort of eliminating the think about it later, because if I ask you how long you've been thinking about it and you say it's been a few weeks or been a few months, or even if it's just today, it doesn't matter. Well, at the end, it's almost silly for them to say to you, I've been thinking about mortgage protection for X amount of time. And then for them at the end to say, well, I still need to think about it more. Right. It's almost like we're eliminating that excuse from them.
Absolutely.
The thing that I love that you did in the role and purpose, yeah, that you did in the role and purpose is setting the table, so to speak, for what's going to happen. If we just get in there and we're flying around willy nilly and we just want to dive into one piece without really kind of explaining the process, we're not giving them confidence to know that A, that we're a professional, that B, that we're going to be asking questions, C, that we're going to end with take an application today. That's part of it. But then also, I would like to consider it kind of like respectfully assumptive, because there were parts where you, for permission, you're letting them know what you're doing, but you're also saying, hey, if it's okay with you, I'm going to be asking questions pertaining to your finances, pertaining to the health, to make sure we get the best option. So keep going, man. This is great.
Amen to that. And by the way, the most genuine person wins. So if you're a college student, if you're waiting tables on the side, if you're just, maybe coming out of the military looking for a change, maybe you just quit your teaching job, let them know that. Let them know who you are, right? Because the minute that they see another human being going through similar things that they go through, or people that they know, now they're dealing with somebody they like. And we don't buy from people that we don't like. In fact, likability and commonality is the number one key factor in an exchange or a trustworthy transaction. So I'm not saying you have to be the most likable person, who knows, but if you're truthful about who you are and where you come from and why you are doing this, hey guys, I'm doing this because I dream of traveling the world, and there's not a better way for me to build up that savings than by helping other people protect their family the way that I've protected mine. Wow, what a statement, right? You're letting them know that you're helping them the same way that you've helped your own family. Because if you don't own what we're helping people with here, you're probably not ready for the field. So get that free app from America or whatever you need to do to get one written on yourself if that's not the case. Another great question. Who do you know that has a story around mortgage protection? So someone that either experienced the benefits of having the protection or the detriments of not having the protection. You guys have a quick story or know anyone? Hopefully they're going to give you an answer, right? Everybody knows something. And if it's crickets, share your own. Well, I can tell you in my own experience, XYZ. I'm going to save some time. I have a story with my grandma's lake cottage, but everybody knows what the stories are. And there are the great stories. Oh yeah, man, they would have been out in the streets, but they got some money and they're in their home and they're living it up, Or yeah, my uncle he didn't have protection, and they had, they lost their home and they had to move back to Idaho, or whatever the case may be. Everybody knows somebody with a kind of story. Right there, you're cementing the importance of this protection, and you're giving them a real life thing that they can relate to. And guess what? If they're not protected and you find they're not protected, as Grant said, you're seeding these things ahead of time. So we are slowly but surely eliminating that think about it. So that's rapport. That's what I've got for rapport. I did take notes. So emotion, guys, what we do is not easy, right? It's not rocket science. It's not physical labor, but it is emotional labor. And it's very, very easy to say, well, yeah, I met with, 8 families this week and no dice, this must not work. But the question is, did you work, right? Because the way that we work here is by applying that emotional labor, by asking the tough questions, by getting to know the family and their situation. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to and I'm like, well, what are their kids' names? Oh, I don't know if they even had kids. Or if they do they live in state or out of state? All this stuff ties into critical period later, but you don't have to know the science behind it necessarily yet. Just be real and get to know people a little bit. And how do you do that? With the important questions, not yes, no questions, but the W questions: who, what, why, where, when, and how, right? Those are questions that stimulate thoughtful answers. If you're framing your questions in a yes no fashion, unless it's, hey, have you ever had cancer, right? That's a yes no question. But if you're framing your questions in a yes no answer when it comes to wanting thoughtful responses, you're not going to get them. You're going to get a yes, a no, or an I don't know. But the how, or what does that look like? How does that feel, right? This gets people thinking and reacting and engaging, and engagement is key here. So do not be emotionally lazy. It's very easy to be emotionally lazy and say, yeah, I read them the quotes and they didn't want anything. Shocker, right? Did you ask them about their life? Did you ask them what happens if? And here's the thing: if you're like, well, I'm not comfortable asking these kind of questions yet, that's okay. You can let the numbers do the heavy lifting. So if you are reluctant to be bold, the numbers will reveal the need and evoke the emotion. So it's very important. I learned this. I was blown away. I'd never done this in my business. And after learning it, I'm surprised I sold anything before that. But Miranda Martin showed us at conference a couple years ago. She actually goes through their entire income and outcome. So there's a couple. John, how much are you bringing in every month? Okay, is that from all sources? Oh, you mow lawns? That's another $100 a month. Great. How about you, Mary? And you just start doing these line items, right? Any other sources of income, right? Bob, what do you already have in place that would pass on to Mary today if you were to die? Write that one down, guys. I'm not going to force you, but it's a really good one. What do you already have in place that would pass on to Mary today if you were to die? And if they need a prompt, guys, like 401k, life insurance, savings, pension, what do you have today that would pass on to Mary if you were to die? Well, guess what? If the answer is nothing, they're going to start feeling it, right? So you didn't have to ask a really tough question. You're just asking, is there something in place if God forbid something happened tomorrow, right? So that's one of the ways to do this. But back to Miranda Martin, not only are you going on the income, but now you're going on the outgoing. Okay, now I know the mortgage is $1,500 a month. Do you guys split that? Do you guys each pitch in? Oh, you do? What do you say, about half and half? Okay. So John $750 out, Mary $750 out on that $1,500, right? And then you go through, she goes all the way down to cell phone bills, Netflix, groceries. You can go as deep as you want. And the deeper you go, the more engaging you're becoming here. So don't think it's ridiculous, because it's not. You're a pro and you're asking them pro questions, so they know you're not selling them something. You're identifying their scenario so that you can identify whether or not they even need the help. And if they need the help, you're going to be there to help them apply, right? But you don't know any of that until you ask them some questions. So these are powerful because it's the easiest way to get to those emotional questions without having to get emotional, if you will, right? So again, for the sake of time, I'll go.
And this is, and hey, Josh, or any of the other managers, feel free to jump in if there's anything you guys want to comment here. But one thing I wanted to just reiterate is these questions are the exact same types of questions, but maybe just phrased a little bit differently from just about what everybody trains on. So I just want to share that whether you're listening to what Mark's going over, whether you're listening to one of our audios, our trainings, a Miranda Martin training, a Jacob Pogue training, it doesn't matter. Like, we're all doing the same process and the same things. And so, before you ever change anything dramatic with what you're doing, make sure you reach out to your upline, have that conversation, because, sometimes we think that we're improving our presentation or our phone script or whatever, but really we're taking it really far off the rails, because if we don't understand someone's complete process, if we just take part of it, that could screw up the whole thing if we're trying to have like a Frankenstein style presentation.
Right.
Just know that these things are really, really awesome additions. And we can easily interchange them with parts of maybe the in-home that you're already doing, but we just want to make sure it fits in the right way. But the questions that I love, right, is we usually ask questions, and we usually teach, the same who, what, why questions when we're digging into the why. But I think you've posed a lot of really good ideas around asking them, like, basically, you're basically leading them towards, say we do nothing today, what happens? What's left for them as it stands right now? And
Right.
when you're phrasing questions that way, it's almost like it's our responsibility to ask this, because if we went into a home and we're truly trying to be the trusted advisor to help them find a plan for them and their family, but we don't situation and we just throw out numbers, we're just a jerk off sales guy that might as well be wearing khakis and working at State Farm. Right? We're not doing the thing to help them and their family. So anyway, Mark, I'll let you keep rolling here, man, because I love what you're doing on the why. And I wish we had 3 through it, but I want to be respectful of your time, of course.
No, me too. And we can, by the way, I'm happy to revisit anything with anyone, and with your permission, answer any questions. But absolutely. And for what it's worth, guys, again, best copycat wins. I got every single one of these questions. Cicely Newsom taught me these questions, right, as part of an in-home process. So you'll often find me quoting other people at Symmetry, because the magic's already here, right? I mean, the spoiler alert here is that you've probably heard this 1,000 times, right? In maybe a few different ways. But the key is sometimes you hear things from certain people that resonates with you in a certain way that maybe it didn't with 8 other people, right? So that's why attending events is so important. If like Grant said, if you're within 3-4 plus hours of any event, get to it, because you never know who's going to say something in a way that you've never heard it, that finally just clicks that button and makes you feel good about what you're doing, right? So but again, this all comes down to quality questions, and that's how I like to get to the emotion, is just by using the numbers. And I have found in our agency, our numbers, we've had agents that did great sales, but then they didn't stick, right? So chargebacks kick in, or we had people that got a lot of think about it. And at the end of the day, 9 times out of 10, it's because you haven't gone over their finances. You're literally advising a family on filling in a gap of what they may not have in place, right? Because if they have it in place, let's be real, they don't need it, and you should be on to help your next family. Most people don't have their stuff together, and they do need this to some degree. But if you're not finding out what their financial situation is, are you really doing your job? Are you really doing your job? Or are you just quoting something and hoping that they understand what it is they need, knowing the stat that once you pass your state exam, I think the statistic is you know more about insurance than 95% of the population just by passing that exam. They don't know anything about this, right? All they know is the stigma that comes with people that try to sell life insurance to other people. And that's the difference. You're not selling life insurance here. You're consulting a family on what they may or may not need. And the only way to identify that need is by asking good questions. And if you identify that there is a need there, it's going to come to them just as fast as it comes to you. If you find yourself telling a family they need something, you got to back up and start asking them questions. The goal is to have them realize they're in need. And the way to do that is simply have them follow along with you. Hey, John, okay, you guys, your mortgage is $1,500 a month. John, you got $2,500 coming in. Mary, you have $1,500 a month coming in. If John dies, I cross out that $2,000. Mary's got $1,500 left. Great, you can pay the mortgage. Now, how are you going to eat and Netflix and gas? And what about all these other line items? Do you have something in place there? Are you planning on maybe moving in with a relative, or would you be getting a job, or what does that look like? Just what does it look like? You're just asking a question, right? She doesn't want to go live with Aunt Sally, and she doesn't want to go get a job. She hopefully wants to be protected, right? Or he, I don't want to be sexist, whoever it is. So that leads to what, the next question there in kind of assuming this is, what would Mary have to do? Do I keep switching names? I probably named these people 8 different names, but let's just say we're talking to a couple. What would Mary have to do to maintain this lifestyle when you die, right? Mary, what would Bob have to do to maintain this lifestyle when you die? Not necessarily the most easy question to ask, because you're talking about somebody dying, but what would they have to do in order to maintain this lifestyle? 9 times out of 10, the answer is, well, nothing, they're fine. Because if that's the case, then great, you just save yourself a bunch of time and go call your next family. And again, when you die, not if you die. We're all going to die. So what would Mary have to do to maintain this lifestyle when you die?
Hey, Mark.
Yes?
Oh, I just wanted to comment on that question because, I've been here probably as long as you. I remember doing the paper apps and visiting homes. And, I think we can still do it over Zoom by asking enough questions. But there's so many extra things that families do, right? Outside of just paying bills. And I love that question that you say, maintain this lifestyle. Because when you talk about the bills, guess what? That's not including the lifestyle, right?
Right.
The kids might play soccer. The kids might, have to travel the country for volleyball or be in the band, or I don't know, but there's a certain way that we all live, right? Maybe they go on vacation every year, whatever it is. And this is the bare bones minimum that you're doing, right? And so it's like, this is just enough to get by, saying we don't want to have any fun and nobody gets sick and nobody gets hurt, right? So
right. You're just alive.
yeah, just making it with nothing fun to do, right? So no, I love that question though, man. Thanks for throwing that in. Like Grant said, we ask a lot of similar questions, but I like that, to maintain the lifestyle. So yeah, keep going, Mark. Sorry, buddy.
No, don't be sorry, please. I wouldn't mind sharing a little stage here. But that's a great point. And I'm so glad that you said it, Josh, because what you reminded me of is one thing I love to do when I'm writing down their names to get their income and their outgoing. I just think that's a crucial step, guys, is getting those finances. That's the perfect time to say, in most cases, right? Everybody's different. If you're visiting with an 84-year-old and she lives alone, maybe you're not asking if she has any kids, but I'm just doing some basic stuff, and you can kind of expand and evolve from here. But if I'm talking to a couple, for instance, I'm not only going to, now that I've written their names down and I've got the finances and everything, I'm also going to say, so do you guys have any kids? Oh yeah, we got 3 kids. Oh good. Are they into sports, video games? What are they into? Get to know the family, because first of all, you're building commonality, and you're being a human being, and you're getting to know them a little bit, but you're not wasting their time or yours. What you're doing is getting an idea of these very things that Josh is talking about. Because now if I'm thinking of, Billy and Jacob, I got to think about all these things that I'm paying for them for, right? All these things that we're furnishing for them. And the more that you can kind of get into that stuff, or, oh, our kids are grown. Oh, okay. Do they live here in state? Here in Indiana, here in Arizona, wherever. Why do I ask that? I'm going to, a spoiler alert, right? Critical period is very important, because if I find that I've got an older couple and they've got kids, I'm going to ask, do they live in state? Because I'm positioning this for critical period, knowing that I'm probably not going to write the whole mortgage on them, right? I'm going to write, but I want to know, is somebody going to be here to take over the home? Do you plan on someone else living here when you pass on? Well, no, he's in Florida and she's in Wyoming. Well, guess what? That's all the more power to you to present critical period, because you want to explain to them. Now, Josh is in Michigan. He doesn't want to be coming down here to Arizona to be staging a home, within 30 days before the next mortgage payment is due, in order to rescue this equity. You guys have $60,000 in equity. I looked up your home on Zillow before we got here, and it looks like you got about 60,000. Another good question to ask is, what do you think your home would be worth if you sold it tomorrow? Fit that into the financial questions. Oh, we could probably get, 200 for it. Oh, great. Your mortgage is 150, so you have 50,000, right? So my job, guys, is to make sure that you get that 50,000 and not the bank, that your kids get that 50,000 and not the bank. That's my job here. So there's no need to be covering the whole mortgage. You could be spending that money elsewhere to live right now. Anyway, I jumped all over the place there, but I hope you get the point on that. So at this point, go ahead.
Okay. No, and this is really good. And so the questions you ask, because this is even, a lot of times we talk about rapport in the very beginning. We don't really always talk about rapport throughout the presentation. So this is awesome, because not only are you trying to figure out the details of the kids, if that applies to like a critical period explanation, but you're trying to figure out, what are their interests? What do they like? Now, what's important here is I can tell the way that you're asking these questions, you actually care, right? Like, these are things where you understand that not only is this going to help you get the application, but it's also going to help you really be the protector for that family. And so, like, when we're asking these questions, they can't be like, oh, hey, my manager told me that I was supposed to find out what your kid's favorite video game was, right? Like, we can't, it's got to be from point of actually being interested in what their interests are. And when we get that, when we have that genuine care for these people, like, you're hearing that throughout Mark's whole entire presentation, is that he cares about them because of the quality the quality and the quantity of the questions that he's asking. And so he doesn't even necessarily have to be an expert. Nothing that he really did showed that he's been in this industry for 30 years. It just shows that he actually cares about them. And so if we show that care, even if we fumble through everything else, we're going to end up being able to help that family. So I just want to give that maybe level of comfort to some people on here that are like, man, it sounds like you've been doing this forever and you know everything about it. Like, these are some things that if you guys just care about the family, you, even day one, not knowing anything about the products, you guys can have success here. So keep on going.
Hey, Grant, Mark, wait a second. How you doing, Mark? You're doing a great job, brother.
Yeah. Wow, thank you.
I don't care. Yeah, you. I don't care how many times I hear this or how long I've been here. I just love this stuff. But I just want to make sure that everybody really understands what you're saying, because the only way you can lead people is by asking them questions. It seems like every time in the beginning when we wouldn't help a family, we get on the phone with Grant, and it's always a question I didn't ask. So I just want to make sure everybody is key on this, how important it is by asking these questions. This is what helps people. So I just want to say, great job.
And being comfortable asking it. If you're uncomfortable asking that same question, they're going to be uncomfortable. So you practice asking those questions in a mirror till you can just look at somebody and say, let me ask you, how much money do you make in a year? Don't let it be like, oh God, I got to ask how much money the man makes. Oh. But be confident in your questions.
That's right.
Great job.
Thank you so much. I love that you guys say that, and it brings up the point. I mean, think of any expert that you go to, right? We all have things in our life that we have to turn to experts for, right? So at the most basic level, let's say you go to a personal trainer. They don't just walk you over to the machine and say, start working out, do 20 of these, right? They say, what are your goals? You know, what are you looking to do? And what brought you to that point? What's your diet like? What are you eating right now? They make you track it, right? You go to the doctor, he doesn't just prescribe something. He has to ask you, well, how long have you been feeling this way? And well, is there anybody at home assisting you with this, right? Every service provider who is really there to serve asks a lot of questions before they get to the point where they're recommending something. Otherwise, you're being disingenuous as to what you're recommending. It's not going to be for the right reason, right? Or at the very least, it most likely will not be the appropriate solution. And all of us are gifted with intuition. It's something it's a muscle you have to build and sharpen and cultivate, but we all have some level of intuition, and people know when you're there for a sale versus when you're there to, hey, I'm licensed and I'm the one that can help you with this, but I got to ask you a bunch of questions to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for you guys. I mean, I say that all the time. I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing for you guys. So I've got to ask these questions to get a good feel for what's going on. So by this point, you've already explained what this is, what it does. You've established the need. So all that's already happened, right? You really have eliminated the think about it to this point, because you've got their finances on paper. There either is something in place or there's not something in place. And that's what we do at Symmetry, right? We don't create a need, we discover a need. So here's some great things for assumption, just a couple quick questions. And guys, by no means am I rushing. I do have to transition to my vehicle in about 5 minutes, but then I got about another half hour, so no big deal. But when you're presenting the options, right, you've got all this stuff worked out, you get to the point where you're gonna say, okay guys, now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go through the data we've collected. I'm gonna work up a few options, and the most important part's up to you guys, and that is how close of a fit is this to your budget, right? So you work up the options, and then when you present the options, here's a great question to ask. How close is one of these options to fitting your needs and budget, right? Now, some people say which one looks best. That's okay. But how close is one of these options to fitting your needs and budget gives you ample room for error, for lack of a better term. Because that we all know that when they say, when you've established a need and they say, I have to think about it, either they don't trust you or they don't want to admit that you're not within their budget, right? You don't go into the department store and see that, $1,000 suit and they say, hey, can I help you with that? You don't say, I can't afford that, right? You just say, no, thanks. I'm looking at some other $1,000 suits over here, right? Nobody wants to admit that it's not within their budget necessarily. So, but if you say, how close is one of these options to fitting your needs and budget, you have all this room to work, because, well, this one's okay, but you know, something closer to $60 a month would be better. That's the kind of answers you're going to get, as opposed to which one of these. Well, we got to think about it. They don't know what we do aside from what we told them. So if you present them two options and that's the only two options, I got to think about it. But if you say, how close is one of these options to fitting your needs and budget, they realize there's some flexibility there. Here's a great bold question to go with, to really lock it in. If you've given them, say, no more than 3 options, by the way, I would recommend. It's usually 2, peas or carrots, but with return of premium and other things in there, sometimes I'm showing them 3 different options. But if they choose, say, the middle one or the top one, here's a great question to lock it in. Let me ask you guys a question. Why did you not go with the lower payment option? Most agents aren't going to ask that because they want the bigger commission, right? But if you ask that question, why did you not go with the lower payment option? Now you've really got their buy-in. They're going to realize that there is a lower option. They're going to be cognizant of the reason that they had for not choosing it, and you're going to greatly reduce any chances of, you know, buyer's remorse, if you will. You're their friend. Help these people like you're helping your parents, like you're helping your siblings, if you like these people. Otherwise, think of some people that you love and respect and help them like you would them. That's all you got to do. That's the only acting that's required here. And it really requires none if you truly just embrace your humanity and realize that these people, just like everybody else, are just as worried about getting ripped off or scammed or making the wrong decision or spending too much or being uncomfortable. We all have that stuff because we've all been there, unfortunately, one way or the other. And they need to know that you're somebody that they can trust, and you're somebody that cares enough to ask these questions. So if questions and finances and all that stuff are not part of your in-home, I guarantee that's the only issue you're having right now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's what I've got for in the home.
Man, I appreciate all of this. I'm so glad we have it recorded, because, you know, even for people that I think have been in the field for a couple of years, they're nodding their heads and thinking, man, I got some new questions that to arm myself with as we go out in the field these next couple of days. So with that, man, I know you got to jump. We're a little over the top of the hour, so we kind of want to wrap it up as well. But I want to just thank you so much for your time today. You know, these kind of trainings and these things, you know, they don't go for granted. And you know, if there's anything that we can do to add value to you or your team, definitely don't hesitate to ask. But with that, man, I just wanted to thank you, Josh. I don't know if you had any final thoughts.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Mark, man. It's a lot of good information. I've been doing this for 5 years. I was taking notes, man. So always good to hear a little bit different twist on the same thing. You know, the foundation is all the same, but sometimes just adding a little bit of flavor on top of it can make a difference. So I love the closing questions, especially, man. Those are cool. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us today, man.
Thank you so much. And guys, always be building. I mean, and I say that with love. I mean, my very first recruit was accidental. My mentor that I interviewed with did not really explain the agency ownership portion of this to me, or maybe he did and I didn't care, because frankly, I only came here to be here for 6 months. I needed a couple thousand a month. I was going to be in and out. That was my game plan. Lo and behold, I found the most amazing culture and leadership opportunity and growth and all this good stuff that came with it. And I'm in it for life because we have a family here. But just a note for those of you that may be thinking about building in the wrong way because you feel like you might be pushing people or pressing or selling or anything like that. When I got done with my interview and I went out to my car to interview because I was embarrassed that I was interviewing for a real job, I went back into my startup office, and my buddy Steve was there, who I went to high school with. We've known each other for 15 years. And I simply said, this thing sounds good. I'm going to do it. You know, would you like to do it? And he said, sure. You know, what is it? Sure. And we jumped into licensing, and the rest is history. Mind you, I wasn't an expert at this. I hadn't even written an app. I hadn't even had my license. I also didn't know about the benefits of building. No one told me about overrides. Nobody asked me about network marketing or nobody did any of that stuff, right? I simply had a friend who I know was in the same position I was. And I said, buddy, do you want to do this? I'm going to try it. And that was day one, you know, that was day zero. And he's still with us to this day. And we've always been great friends. But think about the people in your network that might just want to take a look at this and stop saying, well, I gotta wait till I do something first, because I didn't know. When you're pre-programmed to think that, oh, there's overrides and there's this, and you own your own agency, well, now you feel like you're selling people because of the benefit that comes to you. Get that out of your head. I didn't even know it was available. I did it because I wanted to help my buddy. You know what I mean? So a lot of this stuff comes down to perspective, and I had to just throw that in there because I know a lot of people are starting out. But when it comes to in the home grant, and Josh, I just want to say one more thing. The very best thing you can do for your business, if you're new, and maybe if you're not new and you're like, whoa, I like this finance stuff and everything else, but it's a little daunting, you know, where do I start? I'll tell you where you start. Again, you have people that like and respect you, people that you admire, people that you love. Preface, I'm not asking you to go sell your friends insurance. What I'm recommending you do is go to your network. Think about 6 people tonight, half a dozen people that you could go to as a friend and say, hey, and if there's nobody brand new here, then who knows? But if you're having even any issues whatsoever in the home, or you want to sharpen your skills, go to your network and say, hey, I'm working on a new thing for my business and I need a little practice. Before I go into homes with people I've never met before, you know, we've got leads. So by all means, I'm not trying to sell you insurance. I don't even want to. I'm happy to help anybody that asks, but that's not my MO here. My MO is I need practice. I need to practice with people that I can mess up in front of. Will you give me 20 minutes on a Zoom? Even if they're your next door neighbor, just stay home. I want to get on a Zoom with you. And I just want to kind of go through this. I'll buy you a couple beers. I'll buy you dinner. I'll buy you lunch, you know, whatever it takes. And just do that. I cannot tell you the confidence and proficiency that will be born out of that experience. And you don't have to worry, you know, an iota about, oh, I'm selling my friends, or, oh, now they want me to go to my, no, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying just find someone who cares enough about you. Plenty of people in your circles, I'm sure, that'll give you 20 minutes on Zoom to practice. And I guarantee if you're brand new, you might be surprised. You'll probably end up selling a policy, but that's not the end game. So that's my, whatever that's called, public service announcement.
The PSA, that's right. The PSA tip of the day.
Exactly.
I like it. And you know what, that level of practice, Mark, dude, that level of practice, that goes for every phase of this business. That goes with the phone script. That goes with digging into the why, digging into the finances, calling your friends, your family, if not your upline, to do those role plays are crucial to winning and getting free practice. In fact, actually, they're mostly paid practices, because a lot of times you actually do end up helping some of the friends and family, you know, even though that's not necessarily the intention. But the other thing is, you know, don't feel bad about it if they do have a need, because your friends and family are going to buy this coverage from you know, somebody. Why not it be you? And the other thing is, if you identify that one of your friends or family has a problem that you can solve, wouldn't you feel bad if they passed away and then, you know, their wife came to you and said, hey, can you donate to our GroupMe? Well, now I'm being asked to donate to a GroupMe because I didn't take the time to protect somebody that I knew needed help in my own warm market. So just another thing to keep in mind there. There's nothing wrong with taking care of people in our network.
That's right. Guys, thank you so much for the opportunity here. This was great. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. Well, I know there's been a ton of people in the chat that have got a lot of takeaways, a lot of people in our crew string that have been getting some takeaways. So you made a big impact on us and our team. So with that, guys, we'll kind of close it down here. It's Fridays, so that means it is dial time to book up a really solid week. Continue to post those numbers on crew. Let's celebrate hitting our dial goals together. Everybody that was at the lake house trip this last week, we had an awesome time. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you very much to Josh and Daniel Hiersche for being really gracious hosts, not only from hosting the cabin, but also, you know, just in terms of taking care of the activities and stuff, and the food was awesome. So with that, guys, happy Friday. Have an awesome week. It's Memorial Day weekend, which doesn't mean that we take a 3-day weekend unless you want to. It's your business. But I would tell you that Memorial Day weekend and any type of these holidays are an incredible time to sit with lots of people. People are home, they're with family, they're in a good mood. You're not intruding on them and their family by coming to their home virtually to help them with mortgage protection. If anything, you're being a protector for them on a day when they're probably thinking about family. So don't think that this is a weekend where people are going to tell you, hey, don't ever talk to me again. It's Memorial Day. You might have one jerk who says that to you, but don't let that ruin your sunshine.
Hey, Grant.
Sunshine, don't let it get ruined. All right,
Hey.
guys. Yes,
Hey,
sir.
Grant, real quick, last thing. On that point you just made, if somebody says, hey, it's Memorial Day weekend, I'm busy, most people only celebrate or hang out with family or friends on one day or a few hours of one day. So it doesn't mean they're busy all weekend. And I think it was Miranda Martin that said it, right? When she was talking about doing Memorial Day weekend. What are you doing for the weekend, right? Like what does busy mean? What day are you going to be barbecuing? Where are you going? Well, on Monday at 4:00, I'm going to a barbecue. Okay, that means they're still available Saturday and Sunday. So just remember that, guys. Ask questions. Find out what busy means, because it doesn't mean all 3 days are going to be busy. Me and Danielle, our first year in the business, we worked Memorial Day weekend, and I think we ended up writing $7,500 on the weekend. So very good opportunity. Definitely, God bless all the soldiers that have given their lives, and I know that's the reason for the holiday. But there's also families that could use help, and there's a lot of accidents that happen over this holiday. So hopefully we get to them earlier than later. Everyone have a blessed weekend. Mark, thanks again, buddy, for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon, man. Everyone have a good weekend, guys. We'll see you on Zoom.
Thanks, guys.